You know that we talk a lot about goal setting and making progress and achieving self-mastery on this channel. And when it comes to goals, I talk a lot about the seeds of excellence. The seeds of excellence being the different categories that we create goals in. And just to give you a quick, rough outline of what those categories are, we've got your self-development, your economics, the experiences you want to enjoy in your life, as well as your contribution and donations, how you want to donate your time and or your money to help other people and to truly make a difference in the world. And today, we're going to be talking about exactly that. We have a guest, Vanessa Landry, and we're going to be talking about how we can make a positive impact in the world and how each of us can do our part in order to make that a reality. And for those of us who don't know Vanessa is a sustainability advocate, former C-suite executive and nonprofit specialist, as well as the founder of Conscious Footprint, where she helps passionate eco-advocates scale their impact by clarifying their goals and designing a pathway to achieve them with clarity, commitment, and confidence. Vanessa combines over 10 years of experience in business strategy, team leadership, and behavioral change with a passion for social impact and sustainability to help change makers set ambitious goals and take empowered action by learning a combination of strategy, execution, and belief systems. Vanessa, it's a pleasure to have you here this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love what you talk about, and your seeds of contribution particularly really speak to me. So thank you.
Hey, I dove into your content because there's a lot of things that we could talk about today. And I really want to talk about exactly like what we can do to make a difference, because you talk about social impact, you talk about climate change, you talk about all these things that we all hear about and know of. But I mean, the reality is, where are most of us getting the information from? We're getting it from the news. We're getting it from different media outlets who might want to be giving us their agenda. And I watched a lot of your stuff, and you talk a lot about bettering yourself. You talk a lot about turning passion into purpose. And I want to talk to you about all of that, but I find your background very interesting, with you coming from the corporate and the nonprofit world as a C-suite executive and all the other things you do. So what did that journey look like from this corporate world to what it is you do now with Conscious Footprint?
Oh gosh, it's been such an interesting journey. And it really started when I was 16, and I just became passionate about social impact. I went on a homelessness immersion course when I was 16, which meant I spent 48 hours living in a homeless shelter with other students and people who had just had a rough go of it. And I spent the evening playing cards with people in this homeless shelter and talking to them about their life. And it opened my eyes at 16 to just all the different things in this world that we could work on and help with. And that led me on this journey of studying sociology in my undergrad and going into my career. And, I had a few little divots along the way. I wound up working in the hotel industry for a bit. I went and I did my MBA. And during that process, I realized, no, I need to get back to impact. That's always been the thing that I wanted to do. And so unlike most MBA grads who go into management consulting, I went into the nonprofit sector and started consulting to nonprofits. And that was just amazing to be able to work with organizations with these big, lofty goals who are making the world better every single day, and using my skills to really help them scale their impact. But ultimately, I loved what I was doing, but I wasn't on the ground seeing what was happening. And I watched an episode of Netflix Explained about the global water crisis. And I all of a sudden was just like, I work in social impact. I care about the world. And I had no idea about what we are facing as a planet and the catastrophes that could be happening if we don't do better. And
what is the general idea, by the way? Because I heard you mention this episode on Netflix of the water crisis. What was the general gist of that? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah. So ultimately, the Earth is covered in water, but only about 1% of the Earth's water resources are fit for human consumption. And so we often hear about, marginalized communities having limited access to clean drinking water. Well, actually, that's not going to be marginalized communities for much longer if we don't do something about the water supply. And so we've had instances like cities like Cape Town, other cities in India, and there's even, they're calling for cities like Jakarta to very soon run out of access to clean water. And when you dig through all the root causes, ultimately it all links back to climate change issues we're facing in terms of how we use our water and how we protect the natural resources that we have.
Wow. Unbelievable. Yeah. It's just from an outside perspective, like just from people that I talk to, I know people who, and they're both my friends, by the way, but I know people who are like, we have to do something about this. Like the climate's changing. We have to do our part. But we also have people on the other side who are like, this is a cycle. This thing happens all the time. It's going to sort itself out. And, the thing is, while that could be true, while this might be true, like what can we do now in the sense that what if the first person is right? Like, what if everything that we're hearing is right? Like, if we don't do something, then we're, species are going to extinct. And I want to talk about what that impact looks like a little bit later on. But we very rarely ask ourselves, well, what can I do right now, today, the little small actions that I do, but also having the broader perspective of what we can do when it comes to belief systems and the grand overview, which we'll also talk about. So it's a powerful topic to talk about just in general and to get the word out there. And I'm really curious for you, like when you first wanted to dive into this world, so you did a homelessness, what was it called? A homelessness retreat?
A homelessness immersion.
Interesting. How did you even hear about that?
It was part of my high school. So I was very fortunate to go to an amazing high school where I got to take classes like global women's issues and social justice. And it was amazing. So I was exposed very early to that idea of impact and what I could do to help.
Did you go to a public high school?
Private Catholic all-girls school in California.
I was going to say, there's no way it was the public education system if you're taking courses like that, because that is so powerful. I've never been offered. I didn't even know that thing existed.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It was amazing.
So, okay, so now your eyes have been opened to what's really going on in the world, right? And you say to yourself, I want to make a difference here. What were like the first things that because you were already working in terms of like the social impact field and the space, but when you are confronted with an issue this big as one person, like what was your thought process? Like, how did you even begin?
Honestly, my thought process is, how do I scale faster? And how do I make the largest impact possible as one individual? And very quickly you realize, well, you can't do it alone. And it's only when we all band together that we can have massive collective impact. So knowing my background and my skills, which is largely around strategy, largely around mass marketing, behavior change, like I know that it all comes down to spreading that message as far as wide as possible. So working with other people who have ideas and this passion is the ultimate fastest way that I can scale my message.
Got it. I like how you said you took the skills that you already had, right? Marketing and bringing people together, and you use those in order to make this big difference. And like with me, like I always struggled for a long time really determining what was it that I wanted to do, like with my life and with my direction that I was headed. And I did exactly what you said. Well, what am I good at? What do I enjoy doing? And how can I use those skills for the greater good? Like having conversations like this, keeping people's attention. I've always been good at that. So how can I use those innate abilities in order to truly make a difference there? That's awesome. So obviously we're facing something huge here, right? Climate change, the effects if we don't take action now. So you've mentioned before that we've really only got 8.5 years left if we continue what we're doing right now before we reach the point of no return, as you call it. So what does that point of no return look like exactly?
That's a really interesting question. And ultimately, no one can tell us. So what we do know is that global temperatures are rising, and they're rising quickly and faster than we can support as a planet. So we know that we need to stop those temperatures from rising, and ultimately we want to reverse them. That's the goal. There is an incredible book called The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend. But ultimately, my key takeaway from that book was that all the science and all the research confirm that climate change is happening now. But there are so many variables and so many things that we need to do that we don't exactly know what the eventuality and what the impact will be. So all we can do is work to better the circumstances that we have right now. So try to stop those rising temperatures and do our part as individuals to really reverse those.
Okay, so before we talk about like what we can actually do to do our part, you're saying that if each of us plays a small part, right? And each of us is obviously a very large generalization, because the reality is everyone going to come on board? Probably not, right? So some of us might have to do more than others. So the group of people that do want to do something, there's people watching right now, they're liking, they're engaging with this broadcast, and they're saying, I want to do something. I want to make a positive difference, but I don't know exactly how I can do that. You're saying that if we change our behaviors, we can make a difference in this outcome, even though it's in such a short time away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think every single person has an impact. And my biggest thing is, as long as you're making conscious choices, as long as you're actively thinking about the impact that every choice you make has, you can do better. You know, if you're considering purchasing something in plastic and you remember that that plastic is going to live in the ocean and threaten wildlife, well, sea life, then you can do differently. You can choose not to purchase that item and do something else. And ultimately what happens is, as we start to consciously think about the choices that we're making on a daily basis, we start to change our thinking patterns. And then not only are we going to be purchasing things differently, we might be donating our money to different causes. We might be spending our time watching documentaries rather than the latest crime series on Netflix. And we're learning and we're giving back, and we can really then start to scale that impact even further.
I want to talk about exactly what you just said there. So rather than watching the crime series on Netflix, we could be watching something different to educate ourselves. So let me tell you this. So recently we've seen a lot of restaurants, and this is a beautiful thing, where they went away from the plastic straws and they're using the paper straws, right? Yes. And I understand the change, and I'm very happy about it, because I'm obviously, you've seen this, and a lot of other people have seen this too. The video of the turtle with the straw like stuck into its like nose and all the different areas, and like it's killing wildlife, all this plastic that we're consuming. And I literally walk down this nature trail every single day, and it always like it hurts to see just people throwing stuff into the river, people throwing stuff onto the trail next to it, people shot off the fireworks last night for the 4th of July, and there's like shells from fireworks all over this trail. And I was at a restaurant recently with a friend, and we got the paper straws. And the first thing this friend said is, I hate these paper straws. I hate them because they get all soggy and they're hard to use. And I looked at him and I said, dude, do you know what the point of the paper straw is? And he's like, to make it more difficult for me? And I was like, no, it's to save the wildlife. Have you seen this video? And I showed him the video of the turtle, and he was just blown away by this video. And he's like, I'm never going to use a paper straw again. So my question for you is, why is there such a gap and a lack of education on this area when there's so much information and content in abundance on all these different entertaining things like the crime series and Grey's Anatomy and all these things? Like, why are we not taught and educated more, not to believe in a specific direction, but to what is actually happening in our world and in our environment?
It's such a big question. I don't even know where to start. The one thing I would say is, we are taught, like, the information is out there, but we have to be willing and interested to go find it. And that's the unfortunate reality of living in an information age, is that we have so much on our fingertips that we can block out the news. We don't have to listen to the news. We can block out all the topics, and we can watch cat videos all day on YouTube if that's what we want to do. And ultimately, what it comes down to is, tough conversations are easy to ignore. It's often easier to think climate change is big and scary, and I don't want to go there. And ultimately, the politicians will figure it out. The big corporates who are emitting greenhouse gases, they'll figure it out. So, and what can I, as one person on a planet of billions, do? So I think the question is more around, why are we as individuals so, rejecting the idea that we can have an impact, and because it seems as an individual that it's such a big issue. But ultimately, coming back to your point, the reality is that we all have a role in this, and it's been the progressive change of our ideals and our actions over the last few decades that have led to this, and that we've stopped educating ourselves on this. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I learned how to recycle. Like in schools, and my parents taught me, and then something happened. I went off to university and people just stopped talking about it, and then I moved to a new city and I'm not getting told about the new recycling protocols. There's no guidelines in my mailbox, and we've just been in information overload, so we don't necessarily see the things that are important.
I think it's great that you were taught that, because I was never taught how to recycle. We never had a recycling bin when I was growing up. We had like a bottle bin that we then took and recycled the bottles and got the money back for them. But it's a shame that in order to recycle, we have to get something in return, right? Mm-hmm. We've got to put the bottles in the machines, get the money back. What if we just did it for the greater good? What if we just did it to make a difference? And the reality is, those watching right now, they want to make a difference. They want to make an impact. I think the question for them might be, well, how can I as one person make that impact? And we talk a lot about, well, if you want to make a difference in other people's lives, make a difference in your own life, right? Educate yourself. Like me at the restaurant with my friend, I paid it forward in a way that I didn't expect, just by educating him on what his decisions were adding up to and what his decisions were affecting aside from himself. And the number one way, in my opinion, I want to get your opinion on how we can make a difference, is by helping ourselves. And by making a 1% difference in ourselves, we can then impact the other 99% of people by working on ourselves first. And you talk a lot about goals. Mm-hmm. And you talk a lot about the shorter term goals, like the tactics and tips, like buy the bamboo toothbrush versus the other kinds. Like all those things are cool, but you said unless we have a greater vision to fall back onto, then we might not stick with those things. So can you bring us into like a quick discussion with, do you believe that creating goals is the first step that we can take as just the everyday person in order to make a difference, or where should we begin?
Absolutely. So my fundamental belief is that we need to think about the impact we want to have in our lives. And I look at impact as being the impact on the planet, but also the impact on ourselves, the impact on our community, the impact on our family. So when we think about that and we think, okay, what kind of impact do I want to have? It becomes the guiding force that informs all the other decisions we make in our lives. It informs the career we take on. It informs the relationships we surround ourselves with. It informs the thoughts that we have and the actions that we take and the results that we get. And so ultimately, if our goal in our life is around the impact that we want to have, no matter what that is, whether it's climate change or food security or empowering others, that becomes our guiding light. And so really it takes a lot of inner work and self-reflection to determine what is that impact. That does take work and it takes time. And, I knew that social impact was my goal in life when I was 16, but it took at least 15, 20 years for me to realize, no, I need to harness that into climate change. And that's okay. Our goals shift. But as long as we're working towards them, we're succeeding towards them. So
was it difficult for you to say to yourself, I'm going to just put all of my focus and all of my energy into climate change versus talking about personal development on a whole? Because you're extremely good at that. I went through a goal setting workshop you did. You say a lot of the things that I've heard, but you say them in different ways. So you could have gone a lot of different directions. Was it difficult for you to really pinpoint and choose one thing to focus on?
Not at this stage. No, I think, and in my own self-development and in my own career, learning the art of focus has been the game changer for me for reaching my goals. Because if we have our focus in too many areas, we can't make progress as quickly towards them. And ultimately, as you pointed out earlier, like we are at an urgent state where if we want to reverse the effects of climate change, we have to take action now. So that's where my energy will go for at least the next 8.5 years. And then if it expands beyond that, great, because the reality is that environmentalist issues aren't just solely about climate change. They're intersectional, and that includes things like food security for marginalized communities. It includes things like gender pay gaps, interestingly enough. So, it will expand again, but for the foreseeable future, if I want to have true impact, I really believe that focusing is the key.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And listen, even if you don't want to devote your entire life to climate change, guys, like there are things that we can do now, which we will get to. We will get to the practical stuff, but you talk a lot about how the beliefs and the long-term vision matter a lot more than those just short-term things that we can do, because it's all about, like you say, sustainability and consistency and doing it over and over and over again, because it's our rituals that really create the results that are everlasting and that create results long-term. So beliefs is a big word, right? Like it isn't, but it's a big topic to talk about. What are the beliefs that support the change that you're looking to create in the world? If everyone had these beliefs, we could practically guarantee that 8.5 years from now, we won't reach that point of no return.
That is a great question. And it's something I've been reflecting on a lot lately, actually. Beliefs is something I've been working on. And it ultimately comes down to one, and that is the belief that you can make a difference, that I as an individual can have a contributing role in reversing the effects of climate change.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I love that. You can make a difference just by the little things that we do on a daily basis in order to combat this. And how can someone go from the belief that they might not think they can make a difference to the belief that the absolute, because I found that you can say things, right? You can say, okay, well, Vanessa says that I can make a difference, but how can someone transition from the current belief they have to this newer belief without just saying it over and over and over? Like, is there a process that you found in this reflection that you've done? Like, how can we change that belief?
Yeah, I mean, obviously visualization and affirmations is a piece of it, as you just mentioned. I also believe getting to the root cause of where the opposite of the belief has come from. Where have you been taught that you can't? And is that a legitimate source in your life and one that you want to listen to? So where is this voice coming into our head that taught us that we couldn't make a difference? Because we can. And where did it come from? And usually it just comes from a place of fear. And it comes from a place of mass fear of other people around us influencing that. But, I'm sure you guys have heard the story of the little boy walking along the ocean with his dad, and all the starfish have been washed up on the shore, and the little kid's throwing the starfish back into the ocean. And the dad says to the little kid, there's so many on the ocean. What good is it going to do if you keep throwing them back? And the kid says, well, it makes a difference to this one. And it's true. Like, you are making a difference to one turtle or one polar bear not having his ice caps melt. Like, you are making a difference. And when there's 9 billion people on the planet making a difference, we all have massive collective impact. But it takes us believing in that. It takes us talking about it. It takes us seeing it as well. So, getting involved in your local community and seeing the impact. I've had people who arrange beach cleanups, who, do parks redesigns, and they start to see, the beautiful ecosystems thriving again. When you see it firsthand that you can have an impact, you start to believe, okay, what if I did this on a larger scale?
It's so funny because it's not funny at all, actually, but the concept is funny of, like, I have a friend of mine, his name is Cooper, and this guy will literally see just a paper bag flying through the wind, and he will go out of his way to run after that paper bag and grab it and do something with it. And he inspired me. I remember I did an event years ago for a large company, and I'm outside the venue where we did this, and there was like a bag floating across the parking lot, and I'm all suited up and everything. And I like run over to the bag and pick it up and go throw it out. and I got the weirdest looks from people, the weirdest looks. And I looked back at them and I said, my wife still laughs at me till this day for saying this, but I literally just looked at them and said, I couldn't just let it fly in the wind. And people looked at me like I was this like crazy person. They're like, why is this guy running after a paper bag? Like, it's crazy how uncommon it is to see that. And going back to what you said about beliefs, I have a friend of mine, is a great friend of mine, Vince, his name is, who is a personal trainer. And a lot of his clients come in, and one in particular just kept saying to him over and over, Vince, I'm just not athletic. Like, I can't do this. This workout's too hard for me. I was never an athletic person. And he looked at her, and this is what I'd recommend to everybody who might think like, can I really make a difference? He looked at her and he said, where did that come from? Like you just said, the root cause. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, where did that belief of I am not athletic come from? Where did that belief of I can't make a difference come from? And she looked back in her life at when she played sports. And the coach at one point told her when she failed to make a pass or whatever it was, he's like, you're just not athletic. We need you to do this instead because you're not athletic enough for this position. And that belief and those two phrases stuck with her forever, to the point where it now impacted every little thing that she did. And it's the same exact thing when it comes to this. Like, where did that belief of you can't make a difference come from? Did it come from a friend of yours? Did it come from your parents? Did it come from programming before you were even 4 years old, 5 years old? And what if you asked yourself, well, if you could make a difference, what would you do? If you knew that you could make an impact on this changing tides, quite literally, what would you do? And that question just opens up a whole new world of possibilities. So let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about the person who says, I do want to make a difference. I know that I can and I want to. What are some practical things that we can do in order to make a difference to avoid this point of no return?
Absolutely. So, one of the easiest ways is to start looking at your own lifestyle choices and low waste living. So really looking at how much waste you're creating on a daily basis and what the impact of that is. So minimizing what's going to landfill, even minimizing what's going to recycling, because as most of us know, in most Western societies, only about 10% of what we recycle actually makes it through the recycling process. So eliminating things like plastic so they don't wind up in the oceans, really thinking about it. And even, the straw is a great example. So I have mixed feelings about the war on the plastic straw. In one regard, I think, it's a very small thing, but it did amazing things for raising people's awareness on this issue. So if people start with a plastic straw, they're likely going to transition away from a lot of other plastic items that they don't need. But rather than replace the plastic straw with a paper one, it's actually eliminating the straw altogether. And It's looking at, do we need it? And we don't. It's also embracing more of like a minimalist mindset. We've gone through decades of a very consumerist society where we get things on Amazon at a moment's notice. Anything can show up at our doorstep, but actually thinking about the fact, do I need this in my life? Is this going to better my life in some way? And actually realizing that no, not everything, we don't need everything at our fingertips. And actually the resources that went into making something, the resources that it took to get to my door are actually impacting the planet as well. So beyond just waste, it's about just what are you bringing into your life and what are you purchasing?
Now, I'm a big proponent of there's always one thing that we can do that trumps all of the other things. Like the one thing that we could focus on that, in effect, by focusing on it, will make all the other things unnecessary. Is there one thing that 99.9% of people can do that will make a dramatic effort towards the direction that we want to go in to make a positive difference? Or is it a collection of all these different things?
I would say the one thing is to educate yourself and others. So share what you know. As you educate yourself about the issues or educate yourself about what you can do, share. Because as you did with your one friend, if he goes on to share it with someone else and then someone else and someone else, then that just amplifies and scales your impact even further. And, low waste living might not be the thing that you do. Instead, you might look into, okay, where are you voting? Where are you investing your money? What are you eating? Because your diet plays a massive role. Like, there's loads of different ways that you can decide to have an impact. It's about what works for your life, but share what you find out with others, and so that they can start to explore and understand what they can do as well.
Yeah, that's so true. Just educating yourself and then telling other people about it and spreading the word there, just with your friends, your family. I mean, if every single person can just tell 3 people something that makes a difference in the way they think about the plastic to paper, or eliminating it completely, or whatever else it might be, think about the impact that we can make in 8 years. While it seems like a small amount of time, it really is a long time to change your habits. It takes, some people say 21 days, 66 days to change your habits, change your rituals. Imagine you just change 3 long-standing habits and rituals that you've kept your whole life. That's maybe 6 months of rewiring your programming, going through some temporary discomfort, eliminating the straw, buying a reusable straw. Like, I was just thinking, like, I am in a way, like, and not in a way, I am contributing to this problem. Like, every day I get a Dunkin' Donuts coffee, right? And it's got a straw. And I never thought about that until my conversation with you just now. And I was thinking, well, what can I do though? Like, I can put in the special notes, no straw, right? So they don't even give me a straw. And when I do the pickup online, right? Because it's a freaking world of convenience nowadays. But I can get a reusable straw, right? And I can put that in the Dunkin' coffee. So I just came to a revelation myself that I can now share with other people. So it's just learning these new things and sharing them. And we talk a lot about contribution and a lot about donating either your time and your money to help other people, because what you give will always come back to you. I'm a huge believer in that. And let's say I want to ask you 2 things. Like, what can we give in terms of money? What can we give in terms of time? Because some people have more money, some people have more time. So let's start with the time. We've changed our lifestyle. We changed our rituals, even slightly, in a way that will make a greater impact for the world and the environment. What else can we do now with our time? If we have the excess time, which we can make time, what are some of the most effective things that we can do with our time to make a difference?
Yeah. I mean, volunteering is always a great option. So I come from the nonprofit sector. There are so many great organizations out there doing cleanups, doing education campaigns, doing all the great work that needs to be done to really educate and change our behaviors. So if you have the time to find an organization that aligns with your values and that is working on one of these issues in particular that speaks to you, donating your time there is absolutely one of the best things you can do.
Okay. Very cool. For the person who says, I'm just so busy, Vanessa, I've made these changes in my life. Like, I'm doing everything that I can, but I don't have more time to volunteer. But I do save 10% of my income each month to donate to a cause that's important to me. Are there specific places you recommend that? Because, I mean, we can give our money to places, but we never know what's actually being done with it, right? Are there like tried and true and proven places that are making a huge difference that we could give our financial resources to?
Well, I mean, you can always look to huge global organizations like Greenpeace. They've been around for decades and they've overturned loads of legislation that has been detrimental to the climate crisis. So they've been really actively involved there. There's also organizations like Doctors Without Borders, MSF, who is an international aid organization, but are one of the forefront nonprofits talking about climate refugees and the impact that the climate crisis is having on them. So if you want to donate to a nonprofit, looking in that direction, if you are feeling that way, is always a great option. The other thing, there's always like carbon offsetting programs where you can pay a small monthly fee and the organization will plant trees to offset the carbons that you're emitting in your daily life. So that's a great option. And the other thing that I always like to say is don't rule out investments. So it's not necessarily just about donating these days. There's so many fantastic organizations that are trying to fund green technologies and new innovations that will actually help us to move forward. So if you have the means and the funds to look into some smaller micro funding programs, actually looking into green tech and where you're investing your money is another great option.
It's incredible how many you were just able to rattle off there. So many different places. So we've got Doctors Without Borders, MSF. We've got the carbon offsetting with the planting trees. I love trees. So that speaks to me. It's cool because you know that what you're giving is going towards a physical thing, which is why I like investing in real estate, because you're investing to something that's real. But we could also invest into, like what you just said, the green technologies. And I think the biggest thing here is, yes, change your rituals, change your habits to ones that support the environment and support the earth and the ecosystem that we're all living in on a daily basis. And like you said, our grandchildren are going to live in one day. We can't just think about us. We have to think about our future generations, because that's the only reason why we're here today, is because our past generations. So imagine if we were living in a world of no return. That's just a very grim, bleak future, right? And we have time to change that. And I think the biggest thing here is, what is the one thing, guys, that you're going to do to help to make a positive difference in the world? I'm going to get I almost had order it from Amazon, the straw, but I'm going to go somewhere local and order it because I don't need the box showing up, right? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that one thing, get that straw every day, because that's going to make a difference on the 30 cups of coffee that I get every single month, 30 straws times 12 times however many years. That's just one person. So what is the one thing that you can do in order to make a positive difference? You've got so many different options. What is that going to be for you? Vanessa, I want to talk about your 5-day workshop coming up here, and it's called From Passion to Purpose. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that, where we can sign up and when it begins?
Yeah, absolutely. So this workshop is really about delving into our own passions for impact. So if you are someone who's really just knows that you're meant to do something bigger than you, and you know you want to have an impact on the world, whether it is with regards to climate change or another social initiative, but you may not know exactly how that translates into your greater lifestyle and your career, we take you through a 5-day series to really look at how you can harness that and scale your impact. So taking that passion and turning it into your purpose. And I define purpose as both your impact and a life that you love. So really ensuring that you're setting your lifestyle up to support the impact that you want to have. So that is kicking off next week on Monday, the 12th of July. And people can register if they're interested at consciousfootprint.ca/purpose.
Consciousfootprint.ca/purpose.
Yeah.
And that's from Monday to Friday. It's a 5-day event. And how much is that going to cost them listening?
That it's free. It is a free 5-day workshop. It is about 40 to 60 minutes a day with some deep thinking in between. So definitely jump on board. If you want to have an impact in this world, definitely join us for that.
Consciousfootprint.ca/ what's the last word?
Purpose.
/purpose. There's going to be a link in the description, guys, to go check out this workshop starting July 12th. Be there. Vanessa, I think it's beautiful what you're doing just in general. You're not just helping to make a difference in the environment, but you're helping people to fit this into their lifestyle. You're helping people in a greater way to figure out their own purpose and how they can incorporate this into their purpose. Like, it's just incredible what you're doing. So I just want to commend you for the work that you're doing. And I really look forward to seeing what you accomplish in the next year, 2 years, 3 years. And I look forward to a world where even after 8.5 years from now, you're able to make an even greater impact in the world. So thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you so much for having me.
What a conversation about contribution, how we can personally change, how we can adjust our rituals to fit the greater good of what we're looking to accomplish as a species, as a planet, as an ecosystem. I think the biggest takeaway that I have here with this conversation with Vanessa is there's something that we can be doing right now in order to make a greater impact, whether it's what you're ordering from Amazon, whether it's eliminating the straws altogether. I keep talking about that because that's like the number one thing that I got from this. But what I want you to take away from this, and what I ask of you, is pick one thing that you got from this conversation that you can begin doing right now, something that you can start today, and educate yourself more on it. Share it with a friend. Talk to people about it. This isn't some woo-woo hokey thing like, the climate's changing, the temperatures. This is real. And with the way that we're growing as a human population, with the way that we're creating and the excess that we're creating and all the waste that we're creating, it's only going to get worse and worse unless we do something about it to shift the tides and make a difference. You heard Vanessa has her workshop starting on July 12th. The link is in the description. From passion to purpose, of how you can fit this contribution into your everyday schedule and your everyday routine, as well as really digging deep into what your own purpose is and how it fits into the greater good. So check out Vanessa's workshop with the link in the description. And I thank you for being here. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.